In an effort to maintain compliance with CDC and Pinellas County guidelines for social distancing and general public safety, the city has set up Zoom virtual meetings to facilitate the broadcasting of the Public Art Committee meetings and provide for public comments. My name is Joan Jennings. I'm the chair of the Public Art Committee, and I'd like to call the meeting to order. It is 2 p.m. on Tuesday, May 26th. Marissa, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Ioannou?
Here.
Mr. Meals?
Here.
Ms. Robinson?
Here.
Ms. Jennings?
Here.
Ms. Gregory?
Here.
Ms. Oberlander?
Here.
We have a quorum. I'd like to welcome Michaela as our new alternate, and I would also accept with regret the resignation of Jules Eichmeyer for reasons of health. Replacement for Jules will be decided tonight as agenda item 12 at the Board of Commissioners meeting. We'll start with old business. We have a discussion of the Artist Alley and the mural application process. Two muralists were already selected for the alley. They are Sarah Hooper for Tuscan Sun and Jenny Pearl for Tarpon Tavern. The owner of both buildings, Dan Jenkins, and both artists were informed of the Speed Pro applique process for the murals, and all are on board with using it. Speed Pro uses installers who are bonded and insured, and we discussed this option with City Attorney Trask and learned that the liability insurance must still be put in place. As the insurance issue is presenting a roadblock to having more murals done in Tarpon Springs, we continue to explore various options and insurance methods. City Manager Licouris is investigating the various options for insurance. Does any members of the committee have any comments or questions about the insurance issue for the Artist Alley? Michaela?
Hi, I'm Michaela, and I have a question because if Speed Pro already has insurance and their installation process is 1 to 2 days for the actual installation, would the artist then only have to get liability insurance for the 1 to 2 days or for the whole entire time for the project?
I am not sure. That would be a question for City Attorney Trask. You know, as I said, this is kind of ongoing inquiries. This is something we've been wrestling with for, quite a few months. Any other comments, questions, suggestions?
Can we amend that portion of the contract so that if somebody like a vendor like Speed Pro, who's licensed, bonded, and insured, would do the actual installation, that the artist wouldn't have to pay it separately? Is that something that we've discussed with the city attorney?
Well, the thing is that the application process would be at the discretion and the expense of the artist. The only reason this was suggested was as an attempted workaround for the liability insurance, but City Attorney Trask doesn't think that this obviates the need for the insurance, and they still have to get it. So I think what City Manager Licouris is trying to do is to try to find some kind of, blanket policy that would, cover liability and or workman's comp for, any artist who'd be doing a public art project for the city. Yes?
From what I understood when I looked into this before, if you are a sole proprietor, so if the artist is the only person working on it from his business, then he doesn't have to have workman's comp. And I just wanted to confirm that is correct, but that was my understanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, that's a good point. And, again, it's going to have to be something that, we're discussing with Mr. Trask. Lucianne, you seem to have
Yeah, I don't follow why the artist is even involved in installation at that point.
mm-hmm. Well, many of the murals are actually applied by the artists.
But I thought Speed Pro eliminated that liability by using an image and creating.
Right. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, no, that's if the artist opts to use that process.
So
like
if Speed Pro is used, then there is no liability issue for the artist. Is that correct?
No, for Speed Pro, this is what I'm saying. The city attorney has decided that even though the application process is being done by Speed Pro, the artist who is doing the artwork still needs the insurance.
Really?
I don't get it.
Diane?
I don't either. That's
Diane?
It was my understanding, the way I understood the discussion with Mr. Trask was that the contract, the Public Art Committee contract is with the artist. And so it's not with the whatever company they choose
Mhm.
to implement it.
Right.
That was my understanding.
Yeah, no, your understanding's correct. I think, we've been trying to, we've been, stalled with this project, and, many of the artists are working on a level where, the liability insurance presents a big chunk of whatever fee they were going to charge. So, that's why, as I said, it's been a roadblock. So we've been trying to explore some workarounds. And we just keep running into one roadblock after another. Any other comments, questions, suggestions? Okay. Marissa, are there any emails on this topic?
No, we did not receive any emails on the topic.
Mark, are there any public comments on this topic?
We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to Bill Meals for the art recycling containers update.
And not a whole lot to bring to everyone's attention, Joan. I was supposed to meet with Kyle and the Director of Public Works right after the meeting that we had back in March. So that's been stalled. So I do need to reach out to Director of Public Works and get his schedule. Did Kyle reach out to you regarding the Pelicans? Because that was my last communication with him, was, I was going to get that date set with Tom or Tom's, whoever Tom, designated to visit with Kyle and I. And I did ask Kyle to reach out to you regarding the Pelicans.
Well, I actually had that as an item for ongoing project comments, but
Okay.
The last communication I had from Kyle seemed to indicate that he was looking at some kind of fall start on working on the Pelicans.
Okay.
Diane?
We lost your audio, Joan.
I'm sorry, Joan, we lost your audio.
Joan, can you hear us?
No.
Okay, so try reconnecting. So try on, it's muted right now. So how does that?
Okay, Diane, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. Were you aware of any other communication from Kyle Pierce about the Pelican brief?
No, the last I talked to Kyle, he had quite a few projects that he was doing in different parts of the country. And so he indicated to me that he wouldn't be available until the fall.
Right, that's what my understanding
It
was as
sounded
well.
like September was about the time frame that he would open up, late August into September.
Right.
Now, I guess the issue is whether this pandemic has altered that for him or not. So
I will reach out to him yet this week and try to set something up and see what his schedule's looking like.
That would be great, Bill.
A little slow in responding, so but we'll reach out this week.
Okay, well, we do have a bit of a success story, the Illuminated Art Boxes. The first prototype of the solar-powered Illuminated Art Box was installed on the sponge docks by Tom Function in the Public Works Department, and I'd like to thank them all for putting them up. The prototype box is 20 by 30 inches and contains I believe it's a lino cut, Theo?
Say it again.
Is your artwork a lino cut? A lino cut? What was the medium?
It was a print make, yeah, on the linoleum.
Yeah,
yep.
a lino cut, right. And it's called Dance of the Squid. Is that correct?
Either that or the Squid's Embrace, something. It's on the top of my tongue.
Okay. Theo is a student at SPC and obviously also a PAC member. The box is functioning as anticipated, becoming illuminated to backlight the print in the box at dusk. We are negotiating with Portaboard for additional boxes. And while we are open to discussing installing them in another location, our first priority is to install more on Dodecanese. We asked the vendor if we can have boxes going forward done as squares, 30 by 30, to accommodate both horizontal, vertical, and square images. And they can modify the specs for these boxes. Do I have any, Diane, I believe you have some prices from Portaboard for the boxes?
Yes, ask them about a quantity discount. If we do under 20 units, they're $850 a piece. Anything over 20 units goes down to $800 per box.
Right,
And
I'm sorry.
go ahead. That's good. I'm good.
Okay, no, I thought that there was also some kind of a discount on the shipping for the larger amount.
Yes, they said they could ship them in batches of 10 for $350, which will save about $400 on shipping.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'd like to entertain a discussion about how people feel about going forward with the art boxes. Does anybody have any comments, questions?
Did we ever figure out how many that we wanted to really look at and the possible positioning for those locations?
I think we did a while ago. You know, it was so pre-COVID, it seems like, you know, the dark ages. But I think we were looking at between 10 or 12, you know, on the riverside of Dodecanese, you know, attached to the light poles facing away from the street. So the overall effect would be like an illuminated art walk on the sponge docks.
I like that idea very much, and I do like the prototype that is installed. I have a little contrarian, as always, idea. The sponge docks are so visually stimulating. There is so much down there. I would love to see, I think the 10 along the riverside is a good start, but I would love for us to pick another location in town that maybe is less, more of a visual desert. And we do have some stretches like that. The docks are so lively. I hope that they don't get lost in all of that.
Yeah, do you have any ideas about, alternative placement?
An area that always has struck me as lonely and deserted is the trail between Mears and Martin Luther King.
That's interesting, yeah.
The median there is planted with wonderful peanut, it's, a little yellow flowering ground cover.
Right, yeah, peanut grass, yeah.
Yeah, and I just think that would be a wonderful backdrop for.
Okay, that sounds like a great idea.
And I think as we go forward, the other thought I had about this is letting each series tell some kind of story. That you're progressing through a journey of visual images.
Okay, so so give the artist some kind of thematic guidance for each sort of set of images that we put in.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think there was some discussion, before we even came up with this project about doing, some holiday ideas, like vintage, holiday cards and things of that sort. So that's something else that we can look at. I gathered from Tom Function that it's quite easy to switch out the images. So, it's just a matter of somebody, getting up to the box, unlocking it, taking one image out, and, putting the other ones in. So, and doing the images themselves is going to be pretty, relatively inexpensive. Okay, I guess the original concept was to showcase student art, high school and SPC. So does anybody have any ideas about, how we can reach out to the students or do a call to artists? Michaela?
Well, I teach at SPC, as Theo knows. One thing I would say is you could just email the studio art teachers, and their names are not that hard to gather, and say, hey, we're looking for this. Now, one thing I was curious about, are they all just works on paper, or can the boxes, like if you do a small canvas panel or something like that? I just wondered, when you're doing the call for artists, Theo's is a printmaking, so it's obviously on paper, but would you consider photographs? Would you consider, works that are done on the canvas board or whatever? So would there be diverse media, or would they only be works like printmaking works?
Well, you have to remember they're backlit. So if you do something on a board or canvas, you're going to lose the backlighting effect of them. That's why it's Trish.
Yeah, what are they? What medium? I mean, what are they made of? Is it paper? I haven't seen the one on the dock, unfortunately, so I can't get a concept exactly of what they look like. Or
right.
So what would the art be actually put on?
Diane, well, Portaboard actually did Theo's, artwork complimentary, so we could see, when it arrived, it was in there. And I believe it's just on paper that doesn't have any watermarks on the back that would, show through when it's backlit.
Okay. Does it have to be horizontal, or is it vertical or square, or what size?
Well, that's why I wanted to change the dimensions of the art boxes so they would be square. So we could accommodate horizontal, vertical, or square. I realized after I was looking for the art for the 20 by 30 that they only accommodated, a vertical picture. So that's why, Diane and I discussed it, and we, brought it up with Portaboard about doing, a square box, which gives us a lot more flexibility. Diane?
I believe initially talking to Portaboard that it could be any media. It just would have to be transferred to the paper so that the illumination could come through. But it could be a photograph. It could be, a painting. It could be anything. It's just transferring it to that paper so that it can be illuminated.
Right. Yeah. Is there clarification? Trish?
Is it what kind of paper you're talking about?
As I said, I think it's just something that has, some paper has watermarks or, printing on the back, the manufacturer's watermarks or something like that. It just has to be something that, will not interfere with the backlit illumination and, come through on the image itself.
I'll ask him what he used to see what kind of pound paper, if there was any particular type that they recommended for the best transference. I'll ask them that.
Okay, thanks, Diane. Does anybody have a feeling about how many we should order?
Sounds like 15 to 20 of them.
Yeah, I was leaning toward 20, Bill, because I think that would give us, not only plenty for the sponge docks, but it would give us some backup if we needed it.
Some for downtown and some along the trail.
What
Trish?
about downtown on Tarpon? For the downtown part, something we could put there? Well,
the thing is, I think Lucianne raised the point of, trying to, put it in an area that, she used the word lonely, which I love, that's not quite as busy. Tarpon Ave has a lot going on. The sidewalks are more narrow than the sponge docks. So you're going to get a very crowded feel on Tarpon Ave. Plus, you've got illumination, from the storefronts on both sides of the street. So I think Lucianne's on target with either somewhere along the trail, maybe a couple of locations along the trail, and definitely the sponge docks. So can I entertain a motion to get purchase 20 of the art boxes?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that we purchase 20 of the art boxes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I,
Okay, all against? Anyone against? Anyone abstaining? Okay, looks like we have a motion and a second to purchase 20 of the art boxes.
You know, it might be a really neat opportunity to engage the really younger artists in the elementary and middle schools, to make sure we reach out to some of those art teachers. And you might even pick a subject or a topic and do a month or so where you run everything with what those youngsters were able to put together.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
would
what-
certainly be doable.
Yeah, what about
Trish?
high school? What about Tarpon High School, the art department there?
No, I mentioned high school and
Absolutely.
in the LPC. But, Bill, I think, engaging the elementary school kids is also a great idea.
Yeah, you have a lot of
Children's art
parents.
is very charming.
It is, and you have a lot of parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, that will want to go down and look at the pictures.
Mhm.
Mm.
Okay, so we'll expand our scope to include elementary outreach. Okay. Marissa, are there any emails on this topic?
We did not receive any emails on this topic.
Mark, are there any public comments on this topic?
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. The next item on the agenda is Kevin Grass's Sponge Ducks mural. Due to his teaching workload and unfortunately a recent accident, Mr. Grass has requested that the project be postponed until the fall. A copy of Mr. Grass's communication with Diane Wood was distributed as an attachment to an email sent to all the members this morning. Michaela, I'll get it right one day. Since Mr. Grass is your husband, you'll have to recuse yourself from this issue, but is there any other comments or discussions about this? Okay, Marissa, I'm sorry. Lucia?
that was budgeted for this year. Do we need to carry over those funds into next fiscal year for that?
Diane, I believe that's, I believe most of our budget carries over, does it not?
Yes, the entire budget carries over. It's not like the city budget, like.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's an entirely different fund. Anyone else? Any comments, questions? Marissa, are there any emails?
We did not receive any emails on this topic.
Mark, are there any public comments on this topic?
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay. I'm just going to go through a series of updates on all our current projects. And if anyone has any, comments or questions, please wait until the end. The Indianos mural in the Cultural Heritage Building. Because of the quarantine, the work on the building is finally finished to the point where Miss Indianos can commence work. Her projected start date is May 27th. The Glenna Goodacre sculpture story time. The Public Works Department anticipates installation at the Cultural Heritage Center site to be done around mid-June. Kyle Pierce, the Pelican Brief, we discussed that already. We're probably looking at, fall for a start, and Bill, you'll follow up with Kyle. Lynn Foskett Pearson has completed her donation agreement to the fire department's lobby artwork. The Icaria project, that's the Cecilia Louisa sculpture. A recent email correspondence and photos of the work to date were attached to an email and sent to the PAC members this morning. The artist will provide an update on the status of the sculpture for the development, which is at Mears and Alt 19. And on the project completion, the update will take place sometime in June. Just an aside, according to the ordinance, the apartments cannot be rented until the sculpture is installed. The Christopher Still Advent Health mural. The artist is currently applying layers of color to the canvas and the details are beginning to come alive. The actual canvas will be installed in the hospital lobby once the lobby renovations are complete. Discussion of the public safety facility. The BOC at its February 28th meeting approved a major art project for the public safety facility. The PAC will issue a call to artists for concepts and media and appoint a jury consisting of a PAC member who will chair the jury, Chiefs Cochin of the police department and Scott of the fire department or their designates, and possibly a member of the community will comprise the jury. The current monument at the front of the PSF on Huey Avenue contains steel from the Twin Towers, and it's in disrepair. It was done in-house many years ago. Our hope is that a new monument will preserve it and be incorporated into the art project. The PAC will do an outreach to various community organizations and individuals for donations to support the project and supplement any PAC funding that might be allocated to it. Does anyone have any comments or questions about any of the ongoing projects?
I do.
Go ahead, Lucianne.
Yeah, the public safety project. That was mentioned by one commissioner at the January 28th BOC meeting. There was no action taken. I think this project has taken on a life of its own, driven by Chief Cochin. I don't think we have had any BOC action or direction. And it is my proposal that this project go into our master planning session and be considered with everything else that may come into play.
Okay, do I hear, are you making a motion to that effect?
I don't, if I need to, I will, sure.
Okay, do I hear a second on the motion? Anyone?
I second it.
Trish, okay, all in favor? Yeah, raise your hands, please, so we can see. Okay. Okay, that's unanimous. So when we schedule our workshop meeting, we will make that one of the discussion items for incorporation into the master plan. Marissa, are there any emails on any of these topics?
We have not received any emails on any of those topics.
Mark, are there any public comments on any of these topics?
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay. New business. Developing a protocol to secure Board of Commissioners approval for projects proposed by groups or individual prior to consideration by the PAC. Of course, the public safety thing would be, an example of one such project. I feel that while people are more than able to suggest projects and initiatives, from community organizations and or individuals, that they should obtain clear prior approval from the Board of Commissioners before being undertaken by the PAC. I've come to call a past incidents the Naiads fiasco because the PAC spent significant time, work, and effort, as did many artists involved, on a project that was ultimately deemed to be unacceptable to the Board of Commissioners. Okay, working with our city liaison, Diane Wood, Chief Cochin, the city clerk, and the city attorney, will work to prepare a project application form to be brought before the BOC for approval. And once approved, to be brought before the PAC for action. Okay, does anyone, Lucianne, you feel very strongly about this. Would you like to work on that process?
Yes, I would, but I'd also like to say, I think our strongest opportunity for having accord between the PAC and the BOC is having a master plan in place, as our ordinance requires, with designated priority areas of town for projects. And I think once we've done that work and presented it to the BOC, if they've approved it, then we do have a template. And every individual project doesn't have to be pre-approved, if that makes sense. That's my 2 cents.
Anyone else? Comments, questions? Okay,
Completely
so I guess,
agree.
Bill?
I just completely agree with that.
Okay, so I guess we'll, again, incorporate this concept into considering revisions to the master plan. That's where you're going with this, right, Lucianne? Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Okay, so that will be, deferred to whenever the workshop is set up. Marissa, do we have any emails on this topic?
We have not received any emails on this topic.
Mark, are there any public comments on this topic?
We have no raised hands at this time.
Okay, now okay, Lucianne, you're up. Let's set a date for our workshop to update the general guidelines in the master plan. Mark, I think we need some input from you on this. Lucianne? You're up.
My schedule is open, so I don't have any constraints right now other than childcare. But I do have a question. If we're going to do that virtually, one of the strengths that we have available to us are the series of GIS graphics. I don't know what you call those exactly. And they had some really strong information in them. So how do we do that? I mean, I'm a techno baby, so will we be able to use that stuff in a virtual meeting?
Mark, are you listening? Can we get some feedback from you on this? Mark, are you there?
Which Mark are you referring to? Mark Jump?
Yes. Mark Jump, are you there?
She's experiencing technical difficulties.
Okay. Now we have a question for you about setting up a workshop to update the general guidelines and master plan. And Lucianne was requesting whether we could somehow gain access to all of those wonderful GIS images that were presented to us earlier this year. Mark Jump.
Hello, this is Michael Races. We need to look at the master schedule, and then we can assess that and we can get back to you.
Okay. And would you also look at the possibility of, getting us the GIS images?
Well, we could check with IT, yes.
Okay. All right, so I guess we'll just wait for someone to contact you, Diane. I see you have your hand up.
Would you like to propose several dates? Because there's so much on our the city calendar that maybe if you give us a couple dates that you feel like everybody feels like they'd be available, then we could check that out for you.
Okay, one of the thoughts I had, and let me get the feedback from the other members of the pack. Can we email you dates that we're not available and then work with the IT department? Because I think that their availability is probably more limited than ours is. How does everybody feel about that?
Joan, this is Bill here. It might be beneficial even if we started off with a session to really kind of form an outline of what we want to try to accomplish. Because I think we've got a lot of moving pieces with this. It's like we've got a great set of guidelines and a master plan that a lot of people put a lot of time into. But what we don't have is something that's interactive, that is a tool that we can use. I think that's what Lucianne was referring to. We need a tool that can help us. It says this is a yes or a no without it having to, be a laborious process. And I think, maybe a session to just kind of get our hands around and confirm the mission that we want to, take, and also confirm the vision that we have for where this is going. And then, we've got a whole lot of things to do with coming up and identifying, I call it a gap analysis. where we look at what we currently have, and that's where we start bringing the GIS in, and then we can start integrating and saying, okay, where are the areas that are underserved, whether it's geographically or types of art. So I think that, you know, we've got a lot of organization that has to be done before we might even need to have the GIS folks, you know, brought in.
Okay. Lucienne, are you in agreement?
I am, and at one point we talked about submitting all of our thoughts on revisions and new visions, an outline, if you will, Bill, to Diane at some point, who would then circulate them, and we can have that silent conversation ahead of time. Does that make sense, Bill?
It does. It does.
And a question for Michaela. Do I recall that you have some public art work in your background? Or am
I have my doctoral work was in researching public art and systems of how to put them in place so that they would be accepted by the community. So I have some research background in that.
So is there a common template or outline that, or does it vary by community?
It varies by community at this point. There is no particular common template, although it would be probably possible to contact other communities whose public art outreach we like and say, hey, so what are you doing for your master plan? Is it possible to get a copy of it and adapt that? So for instance, Seattle, Washington is renowned as a city for having lots of public art. So somebody could possibly contact Seattle and say, hey, you know, we're trying this. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. What do you recommend? Something along those lines. But what are GIS images? When you guys are talking about that, it doesn't make any sense to me.
They're overlaid images, usually based on a map. I don't know what, I think it's geographic information systems. Is that the right acronym?
That is, that's correct.
Okay.
And it's basically an inventory. It can be an inventory of so many different things. And again, what it does is it puts it in position, and it also can serve as a registry to where things are located and what type of things they are, when they were created, when they're going to need maintenance. You know, all those things can be integrated into that.
Right. It ends up as a layered PDF, and you know, it's almost like a you know, a Photoshop layered image where you can turn layers on and off. You know, as Bill said, you can, you know, you can determine a lot of different you know, values and you know, criteria for creating each GIS image.
Okay, that makes
Yeah.
much more sense then. Thanks for explaining.
Okay, so Diane, we're gonna all send our thoughts and ideas and visions to you to create some kind of consensus that from us all that will, you know, get back from you at some point.
Okay, do you want to go ahead and put a deadline on that? Keep in mind that our next meeting is June 9th.
Mm-hmm. I think that might be asking a bit much to have it by June 9th. Shall we try to get it for the projected July meeting?
The July meeting would be the 14th.
Okay, would that work for you, Diane?
Sure.
Okay. Is everybody else okay with that?
Is there any kind of format that you want us to put that into, or just kind of random thoughts, or what would be the easiest for Diane to compile?
Mm-hmm.
Probably, I would suggest kind of like an outline form, you know, with just like bullet points, like a subject matter, and then maybe some bullet points underneath them. And you can have as many as you want. Then I could kind of consolidate everybody's ideas, you know, and then I'll put the author next to it so that you can see, you know, who you know, offer that suggestion, those suggestions so that you can discuss it further. How's that?
Okay, that works. Is everyone else okay with that? Any comments? Okay. Marissa, are there any emails on this topic?
We have not received any emails on this topic.
Mark, are there any public comments on this topic?
We do not have any raised hands at this time.
Okay, thank you. And believe it or not, we're coming to the end here. We'd like to discuss the call to artist announcement revisions. Diane provided examples from other municipalities to consider for modification. But I know, I think we need more time to review them. And I'd like to hear a motion to defer those to the June PAC meeting. Unless somebody feels there's more of an urgency about it.
I so move.
Thank you,
I
Lucienne.
second.
A second.
Okay, all right, the motion to defer the call to artist revisions is carried. Marissa, are there any emails on this topic?
We have not received any emails on this topic.
Mark, any public comments?
We have no raised hands.
Okay. One final thing for just an item to think about. At a recent Board of Commissioners CRA meeting, the topic of murals on buildings for advertising umbrellas was discussed. Does the committee feel that this is a topic that involves us, or is it solely a zoning issue? Anyone have any thoughts? In other words, you know, some businesses have privately contracted with muralists to, you know, create murals for their business. Does anyone feel that this is something that, you know, perhaps we should be involved in any way, shape, or form, or is this, you know?
I do not. I don't think there should be any roadblocks for a business owner that wants to take that on. And
Right, I agree.
when you look at the
That's a zoning
distillery, that's
issue.
fabulous. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that whatever is negotiated between a building owner and an artist, you know, that's it. I don't think that we need to have any involvement in it whatsoever. Any other comments, or I just wanted to get some clarification on that? Okay, Diane, do you have any city announcements or any other comments?
I was just gonna ask, are you going to, can you email me the dates, everybody that you're not available, or
Mhm.
before the next meeting, before the 9th of June, and so we can set that workshop.
Okay.
date up.
Would that be a workshop in June, sometime in the month of June? Are you talking about for the workshop?
It's up to you all. I mean,
Well,
it's,
if we're going to put dates on when we're not available,
Yeah.
would it be June or July, or, yeah?
what do you all think?
If we're not getting our outlines to you until July, there isn't any use in having a meeting, is there? A
For
workshop?
the workshop? Yeah, good point.
Yeah, no, I'd like to get this done earlier, the earlier the better. So, you know, and, you know, I think, you know, I think I mentioned it earlier too, maybe get an idea from IT when they can't do it. Because I can't help but assume that, you know, most of us are going to be available, you know, because of the, you know, continued quarantine conditions.
Well, why don't I do this? Why don't I give you all some dates that would work for them?
Perfect.
And then I'll email it out to everybody and we'll try to get a consensus. Would that work?
Yeah,
That
that
works.
sounds good.
I think that makes more sense. Because
Okay.
I think we're, you know, much more flexible than the IT department is. I know that they've been under so much pressure with all of these Zoom meetings.
They're very busy, but
Yes.
also I wanted to also ask you, we need to approve the minutes from the March meeting.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do I hear a motion to approve? The minutes
I
from
moved, I move to approve the March minutes, yeah.
Second,
Trish, and was that a second, Lucienne?
second, yep.
Okay. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Thank you, Diane.
And then
Okay.
which month were we looking for a meeting?
Sometime in June.
Sometime in June. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And how much time do you think we should block out for that?
For the meeting
Maybe 2
itself?
hours?
Yeah, we'd block you out a 2-hour lot.
Okay, that sounds good. Okay. Any additions to the agenda? Michaela?
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yeah, you're muted.
Please excuse me. I wondered if we could make a motion to look into the contracts that we're using with our murals, because what they ask for is that an artist gives up his copyright to the image. And that is something that is not typically done in public art projects, and I think could be a real stumbling block with established artists for them saying, hey, you know, if you're going to ask me to give up my copyright, you're going to have to pay me extra for this, or I won't do it. And so I wondered if somebody else would agree with me that maybe we could look into what the contracts are from some of the other public art established programs to see, because giving up an artist's copyright is a big deal and is not standard practice. And
Well, first, I think this is a matter between the artist and the city attorney. And it's also outlined to some extent in the ordinance. So it's not just a matter of discussion, it would require some kind of revision to the ordinance. So I don't know how does everybody feel about this? I personally don't think it's you know, a topic for us to discuss. I think it's you know, as I said, it's between the artist and the city attorney, whatever's negotiated. Anyone else?
wait, does that mean,
I think it bears looking into if it's a hindrance. And if there are other examples of public art programs that do not require that.
It's kind of very similar to the insurance issue.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Theo, do you have any thoughts about this?
No, I think if it's something that is going to be a problem, it's going to need to be looked into. But if it's not too big of a problem, then it's something that doesn't need to have too much to look into.
Yeah, I was given to believe that it was a matter of whatever's negotiated between the city attorney and the artist. You know, normally, and of course, there's always exception to the normal. Usually when something is commissioned by a municipality, the artist would, you know, give up copyright. But
no, actually, that's not normal. That's my point is,
mm,
does contacting the city attorney directly, is that considered appropriate for an artist who is trying to do something in front of the committee? The reason I ask is I was under the understanding that the artist needed to work via Diane to contact the city attorney as well as the PAC. So you're saying that they can contact the city attorney directly and negotiate their own contract, which would also mean that the next artist who would come along who says, hey, I really don't like that you're asking me to give up copyright, they need to renegotiate this whole thing from scratch again.
right.
But should they contact the city attorney directly, and how do they do that?
Well, first the project has to be an approved project of the PAC. And usually there's a proposal made and a discussion of the project by the committee. And then it goes to the city attorney for a contract. And I think at that point, Diane, correct me if I'm wrong, during those negotiations, it's between the artist and the city attorney as to, you know, exactly, you know, what the copyright terms are.
I'm not sure about contact him directly, I could find out, but the way it's been is that if, I get the contract from Mr. Trask and then I give it to the artist for review. And then if they have anything that they don't like, they can go ahead and, redline it or maybe write something different in, and it goes back and forth between them until
Mhm.
both parties are satisfied,
Right,
and
so
then
it is
if they
negotiated,
can't,
right.
and then if they can't, then, I have never had that happen, so anyway.
Right, but it's basically a negotiation between the attorney and the artist, once it gets to that point.
But I just pass it back and forth to them just because
Right.
he's contracted by the city, and that's what my job as a liaison is to, pass the back and forth to whatever department, needs involvement.
Right, and when it reaches a point of agreement between the artist and the city attorney, then it goes to the Board of Commissioners for approval, correct?
Mhm.
It's got to reach that point,
Yes,
okay?
so I don't know what, you can go ahead and do whatever y'all would like to do if you want to review it.
Okay, well, I don't think we have the background or the legal opinions to do anything about it today. So at the very least, I think it should be deferred for, further consideration and maybe some research. Is everybody in agreement with that?
Yes.
Yes,
I'd
I
be
think,
happy to do some research.
Lucienne?
I think it would be great to have some examples from other municipalities
Mm-hmm.
and to see what the norm is. I think that will serve us well in trying to get a change.
Okay. All right. Okay, so anyway, we'll defer it and look into it in more detail going forward and see if we can find some other examples. So our next regular meeting is currently scheduled for June 9th. And again, this is at the discretion of the IT department for scheduling, correct, Diane? If any,
You're still muted, Diane.
I believe it is on the agenda, on their agenda. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark.
Yes, we do have you scheduled for the 9th. And also, Mike and I have been discussing it. We do have an availability on June 15th at 2 p.m.
okay, for the workshop?
for a workshop.
Okay, does everybody want to check their schedules and see?
So that means we have to have outline material to Diane well before that, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I've got, I've got the
Yeah.
day clear, so it's fine with me.
It's fine with me. I'm okay.
If you all could get it to me by the 12th, I'll compile it and have it ready for the 15th.
Okay. Okay.
Does that work for everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, and thank you, Diane. That's.
Sure.
Okay, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Or
Yes.
does anyone have anything else to discuss? Okay, Trish, motion to adjourn. Do I get a second?
Second.
Okay, meeting is adjourned at 2:55 p.m. Thank you all very much. Thank you, Mark Jump, and thank you, Marissa.